Hi, everybody. This is Sarah Suk, the fundraising lead for Right on Con. I'm very excited to be chatting with picture book author John Himmelman about nonfiction picture books today. John, how are you doing?
I am doing well. How are you?
Great, thanks. For those of you who may not know, John is the author of many picture books, including There's a Bug on My Book, Tales of Bunjitsu Bunny, and Floaty, just to name a few. John, can you tell us a little bit about your books?
Um, well, I've been doing this about 35 years, and I do mostly fiction, but I would say about a third of the books have been nonfiction, nature oriented,
Hmm.
which reflect my own interests.
So you write both fiction and nonfiction picture books. Can you tell me a little bit about the differences in the process behind writing those, or are they quite similar?
They're actually similar. Um, I, I'm the illustrator as well, and for years, I did just fiction, silly books, things to make kids laugh.
Mhm.
But I'm also a naturalist, and it took me a long time to figure out a way to share my love of natural history of animals and nature and things like that. And it occurred to me that the stories about nature are stories. You have a main character, you have problems that the characters have, their life and death problems of survival out in the natural world.
Mm.
There's some humor in it. There's friendship. There's all the aspects that you look for in a story take place in real life in nonfiction, in that nonfiction genre.
Mm. Is that what made you start writing nonfiction picture books? Because you realized there's actually a really interesting story in there?
Yeah, and also it's there's something about sharing things that interest you
Mm.
that is very satisfying. It actually makes it better. Like if you taste something really good, you want someone else to try it and see how good it tastes. If you see a movie you really like, you want to share that. You want someone else to see it.
Mhm.
I'm interested in bugs. I'm interested in birds, and I'd like to share that enthusiasm with other people. And I have the best outlet to do that. I get to tell the stories and draw pictures about it.
Mm. Have you always been interested in the natural world?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I, as a kid, I started a bug club in second or third grade where we just had like a bug zoo in my friend's attic. And I've always had an interest. For me, it's a big treasure hunt, going outside and finding things that I've never seen before. And
Mm.
you find something that leads to something else, and that leads to something else. It's just never ending.
Mm. Would you say then the best way to choose a topic for a nonfiction picture book is to choose something that you yourself are really passionate about?
Absolutely. Or find something that you want to learn more about. I will sometimes dive into a project and only know about half of what I should about that particular thing, and it's the research that gets exciting for me. I
Mm.
wish I could just do research for a living, just learn stuff, but no one pays you to do that. I don't think.
Mm.
But no, so to me, it's something that already sparked an interest or a curiosity, and I think that's even best because the kids sort of learn the same way.
Mm.
Just
Wow.
follow that, and you can get an answer.
Mm. What does your research process look like?
I go outside because my nonfiction is natural history. I go outside and I
Right.
look for these things that I'm going to write about. And I'll follow them around sometimes through the seasons if it's a particular animal. And then I used to just start whenever I did this book called it's the Nature Up Close series. It's 13 books. Each one follows the life of a particular animal, a salamander, a ladybug, a hummingbird. And I would start off at my local library. Then I'd go to the library in the next town, and I would go all the way. I live in Connecticut, all the way to New Haven, where there's the Yale Klein Science Library. And then I'd get all the information, and then come back home and use that information to to write about what I'm writing about. And I probably wouldn't use 1/10 of what I even found out, but
Really? Oh.
because they're children's books, they're picture books. There's only so much you can share.
Wow, then you must have a lot of just random interesting facts that you just know that you can carry around with you.
Oh yeah. People love hearing this.
Do you have any interesting facts that you can share with me today?
Not on the spot.
Okay, I'll come back to that if I think of anything I want to know. Would you say that there are any subjects that you should avoid while writing children's nonfiction books, or is everything just kind of free for all?
Oh yeah, no. Avoid writing something you don't want to really
Mm,
write about.
mm,
Make yourself miserable. So that's why I choose what interests me, and it just makes for a happier career.
mm. Would you say that nonfiction picture books pose different challenges than writing fiction picture books?
I think so because they're nonfiction. You need accuracy,
Mhm.
um, and you have to do it in a way that's not boring. That's not a textbook. You want the kid to pick it up and not be lectured, uh, and to find and to share that interest that you have. So that's the thing. And also because I'm the illustrator, I always have all my naturalist friends virtually looking over my shoulder as I'm doing these pictures, and I'm thinking, oh, he's going to know that's wrong. Better get that beak right, or something like that. So they keep me honest.
Mm. Mm. When you say you don't want it to obviously sound like a textbook because it's a picture book for children, how do you go about that? Like, how do you make it interesting for kids and not just like yeah, something you might read in a biology class?
Well, a couple things. One is I share what's interesting to me with the hope that they would also find it interesting. And that seemed to have worked out so far. And the other is I also like to include children in these stories,
Mm,
uh, so they could see it through the eye of the child in the story and maybe identify with that. So
mm,
that's always been a key to a lot of the nature books that I've done is they include people. We're part of nature, and we observe nature in a unique way, and sometimes it excites us, sometimes it scares us, but hopefully it leads us to ask more questions about that particular thing.
mm. Wow, I love that how that personal connection where the child can see themselves in the story. I feel like that's a big part of making it less textbook and more like heart connection. I really like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you had any memorable experiences from kids who have learned something from your books or who have been really excited about these nonfiction picture books?
Yeah, I get letters from kids, and which is kind of fun. I think the best thing that ever happened. I was researching a book called "Who's at the Seashore," and I was walking along a beach one town over. I was looking for a little creature that called sand hoppers, little beach hoppers. They're these
Oh,
little creatures that live under the seaweed, and I
mm,
needed some so I could bring them home and draw them for the book. And I'm searching the beach, and these two kids are watching me, wondering what's going on. And they finally got up the nerve to ask me what I was doing. I said, "Oh, I'm looking for these little bugs." And I showed them one. "Oh, can we help?" "Sure." And I'm with these two kids and we're flipping things. This little girl walks over. "What are you guys doing?" "We're looking for these little bugs." "Oh, can I help?" Then a mother came over with her two kids. And I'm standing back looking, look at all these kids here. They're all flipping the seaweed. They're doing exactly what I want them to do when they
right.
read the book, but they're doing it now with me. And I'll never forget that.
Mm.
That was so cool.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, I really love
Yeah.
that story. You said that you're also an illustrator. Is that
Yes.
have you always been both a writer and an illustrator, or did you start off doing one?
Always. Now I've always done both. I think the writing came as um, a way to give me something to illustrate, but
Mm,
I used to feel more strongly as an illustrator. But now they're about 50-50. I think you know in the years I've been doing this, that they both are equally important.
mhm. You mentioned earlier about accuracy when it comes to illustrating nonfiction picture books.
Yeah.
So how do you go about pursuing that accuracy? I guess you just like look at the same
Yes.
bug, the same notcher just like for hours, or how does that work?
they will be on my desk, and I don't kill things. Like in a collection, that's the challenge. It would be so much easier if I did. And drawing some
Right.
little beetle crawling around in something that you caught. Oh, I wish you'd stop crawling around so I could draw it. But it's kind of my own self-imposed, rules. So,
Yeah.
but I like to draw the actual thing from life because mistakes are made in other people's illustrations that
Yeah.
I would just be passing on to my own. And I just feel there's an honesty to that. I feel like this helps me get to know that character even better. I mean, what better way to learn about it is to sit there and study it and actually draw it, try to make it look like the thing that it is.
Mhm.
So that's what I do. If it's a plant, I bring the plant in. A little tougher with birds. With birds, it's photographs
Oh, cool.
mostly.
Okay.
We're just observing with binoculars, and I have a pretty good memory when I see things. I can recall certain details. As a bird watcher, I know certain things that you have to look for. Um, but I did a book about slugs, and I raised a family of slugs on my deck, and I learned that they're really great escape artists. And my wife would be, John, your slugs are in the sink again, and
Oh my god.
sometimes they get away and makes it even more interesting.
Oh wow. Have you had a favorite bug that you illustrated? Like your most favorite project so far in terms of nonfiction picture books?
Um, I did I did a book called Noisy Bug Sing Along, and it's about the sounds that animals make. I love drawing katydids. Katydids are they're like living leaves, and they're just the coolest things to look at. And they make all different kinds of sounds. So I enjoyed doing those. I did a book about an earthworm, and I just got this weird satisfaction of drawing great big earthworms. I don't know why. I think it's because of all like the little shiny points you could put alongside to show how wet they are. It was just kind of a fun thing to draw.
um,
Show it to you, but it's a podcast and no one would see it.
so it sounds like you're very hands-on in your research. You birdwatch, you're out there flipping rocks, looking at things. Um, would you say that that's one of your favorite parts of writing and illustrating is even just like being out there and discovering new things?
Oh, absolutely. I just do this on my own. It has nothing to do with my career. I
Mhm.
go out with friends and we just look for stuff. We started this little group called the Core of Discovery. I
Wow.
think there's about 8 or 9 of us. We all get together and we move. We move about 10 feet an hour because there's just so much to see along the way. And I have friends interested in insects, friends interested in mushrooms, um, plants, and just pretty much every aspect. And we all get together and we just explore and we find stuff. We're like just kids, walking around in the woods and finding stuff and having fun. So
That's
that to me,
awesome.
that's the best part. And so that translates into, okay, can I do a book about this? And I usually try to find something along those lines that, as I was saying earlier, is interesting to me.
Mm. Have you ever started off with an idea for a book and then while you were researching discovered that it was really different than what you had first thought it was?
Probably 95% of the time. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's amazing that first idea you get, how different the final product is from there. It's a
Mm,
long journey, and that's that initial idea was the spark that ignited you to actually sit down and pursue this. Um, and where it goes from there is that's part of the creative process. Fiction, nonfiction, anything, music, any of the arts. It starts out as something you might want to start to do, and it just evolves into something else. To me, that's the true art of this whole genre.
mm. Can I ask, is there anything that you are really excited to write a book about in the future or that you really want to write a book about in the future?
I have a novel, a young adult novel that's coming out. I'm finishing up, so that's exciting. That's not nonfiction. It's about a giant, but
Oh,
um,
very
yeah. And I just finished a book. It's coming out in soon. Wow, real soon. It's about a box turtle. and box turtles can live to over 100 years old. So I wrote a story about a turtle that lives on this. It started out living in the woods, and the wood lot got smaller and smaller and smaller as that 100 years went on. So I basically told the story of the passing of time through the eyes of a turtle,
Wow.
and did that without. I didn't want to anthropomorphize. I just wanted to keep it, you know, this is just a turtle seeing this happen. So that was kind of fun to do, and it was a bit of a challenge too.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of challenges, in the many books that you've written in your career thus far, what were some of the more challenging subjects in your nonfiction picture books? So you mentioned the bugs that kind of like roam around, so it's hard to
Yeah.
illustrate them all the time. What were some other challenging subjects that you had?
Probably the most challenge. I did a book on mealworms. You know what mealworms are? You know, you raise a
A
science book.
little bit.
And the
Okay.
editor thought you should do this, do a book because kids raise them in school and all that. And what they turn into, the mealworms turn into little beetles. And this was part of the Nature of Close series that I mentioned earlier. And this was the last one I did in the series. And in every book, the character travels around through, its habitat. Well, mealworms don't go anywhere. They just live in whatever, until they're beetles. And even the beetles don't travel that much. And I had read the beetles don't fly. And it's, well, how am I going to move this character around from one scene to another if it just lives in a whole, if it lives. So it turns out they were wrong, that they do fly and they're attracted to lights. And I actually went outside with a beetle that had just hatched from the mealworms that I grew. And I'm holding it in front of the lights and come on, you got to fly. I need you to fly so I can tell a story about you. I'm tossing it up in the air and it's not flying. And finally it opened up its wings and it flew and binged into the light. And yes, they fly, they fly. I could write a story about this, so I have it fly into someone's shed where it gets into the chicken food and all that, and it just opened up a whole area of possibilities. But that's an example of the experts being wrong. You have to be
Mm,
careful when you're researching things on the internet. I did my own little experiment with that poor little bug,
right,
and
but it was
something.
scary.
Yeah.
Um, what are some of your favorite nonfiction picture books?
um, I actually like. I rediscovered history. There's a book written by a friend, Kay Kudlinski. She wrote The Spirit Catchers. It's about young Georgia O'Keeffe,
Mm,
and it just fascinated me, the whole mood of the story. And she's a fascinating artist to start with. But I would put that out there as one of my favorite nonfiction, non-adult books. The
nonfiction.
Spirit Catchers, Kay
Mm,
Kudlinski.
okay, I'll check that one out.
Yeah, yeah.
What would you say is I think there are so many, but what would you say are some of the benefits of nonfiction picture books for kids?
Well, I think the picture book format speaks to them because it's pictures. It's like looking at pictures. So you have that, and if it's done right, you- you're introducing them to something that they might not be familiar with, and the hope is they'll want to go learn even more on their own. And that's what I hope for. You sort of hit all the interesting points and then hope that maybe this is a starting point for further exploration. So that's always in the back of my mind. That's why you don't have to give all the information. You just want to light that little spark
Mm,
of curiosity in them. And again, that can be also done in fiction, but it's really done a lot in nonfiction
right.
for real things.
Can I ask, you seem like a very curious person, love to explore, very adventurous. What sparked your curiosities?
Oh, I don't know. That's something that you kind of start with.
Mm,
It's got to be in you. People are different. People are curious about different things, and I've always just been curious about the outdoors. As I said before, it's like a treasure hunt. And I also mentioned I've recently become curious about history. I'm just reading a lot of history and just finding those stories fascinating. You can't make up stories as good as some of the actual
mm,
stories in our country's history or in world history. So that's where I am now with it.
mm, mhm, mm. When you are drafting a picture book, do you find that the words and the images come together, or do you focus just on illustrating as much as possible first and then putting in the words, or is it like a hand in hand process?
Sometimes the idea comes from a picture, and that's a jumping off point. Um, with the natural history stuff, the words come first, and then the pictures.
Mm.
And sometimes it's something that I know is going to be a huge challenge to draw, and I try to force myself to do it. Like I used to hate drawing horses. Something about how the legs bend, and cows, their legs are the same, and deer, they're the same legs as horses, and they're just intimidating. But you kind of force yourself to do these things that push you a little bit further. But yes, the words come first in here, and what the words are, they're picture books are usually 32 pages. So I'm giving myself 32 assignments of something to draw, and then that's comforting, is knowing what that assignment is going to be. Like today I have to draw the egg of a ladybug, and then I have to draw the pupa of the ladybug, and so on. And the
Mm.
research all centers around those little assignments that I know are going to come up.
Mm. Did
Makes
you?
sense.
It does make sense. I wish I was better at drawing, um, because I love picture books so much, but I always get stuck on the pictures. So for me, it's just all words. But it's so cool to hear the process for you and how they're just so interconnected.
Mm-hmm. It very much is, yeah.
Mm. Have you always known that you wanted to be a picture book author and illustrator?
No. In college, I was working in a library in New York, and I was often in the children's book section putting away the children's books that people had returned. And I was coming across like Frog and Toad, those stories, and
Yes, classic.
Mercer Mayer books. Oh, I love Frog and Toad. Yeah. And all these wonderful books. And here are examples of people doing two things that I really like to do. I like to draw pictures. I like to tell stories. And whoa, you could do both. You could do picture books. So in my last year of college, I went to School of Visual Arts. I took a course in children's book illustration taught by Dale
Mm.
Tyson, and I wrote a little story about this lizard that was living in my room that my wife had bought me before she went off to college.
Mhm.
And my teacher showed it to her editor, and that became my first book. And I
Oh
said,
wow.
yeah, maybe I'll do this. Because up to that point, I had no idea what I was going to do.
Mm.
But that sort of gave me my start. It was Talister the Lizard, and that was 1982 that came out.
Oh, that's awesome.
And ever since.
Mm. Um, would you say that that book? Well, I imagine all of your books must hold a special place in your heart. But do you have any books that you've written that are like, oh, that one, like I am gonna remember that one for the rest of my life. It's kind of like my trophy book.
Yeah, there posts. There's certain books that stand out, in your career. It's funny. I wonder if my wife, she was my fiance, if she didn't buy me that lizard, I wouldn't have written a story about it. Would I be doing this for a living? I wonder that. I don't know. But that was, yeah. That's the first one is always the best. One of my biggest ones is Ibis, a true whale story, and it's about um, a, a whale. Based on a whale named Ibis who got entangled in fishing nets and was rescued by the people at the Center for Coastal Studies in Massachusetts. And that's one of my fence posts. I feel like I did something right in that one. And I told the story from the whale's point of view as she was being rescued. Um, so that was, yeah, that's another one that's up there with Batalister. The first one is always going to be kind of special.
It all started with a lizard.
It all started with a lizard.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to write nonfiction picture books?
Um, First, you should go and see what's out there. Go to a bookstore, go to a library, look at the new stuff that's coming out. A lot of people who are starting out, they base their style and how they tell the story on what they heard when they were kids. It's different. It's just children's book literature just changes over the years. So look at what's there, and then as I was hammering home, find what interests you and tell those stories. And for nonfiction, you really have to do your research. If there's something wrong in there, you will hear it. Even if the editor misses it, the copy editor misses it, the kids are going to write. And I've gotten letters by little oopsies that I've made in some of my stories, and it kills you because you can't go back and fix it. So really do your research and don't depend on the internet.
Mm,
That's a big one too.
that's good advice.
Do you write? Do you write?
I do. I do. I write middle grade fiction and also young adult. Um,
Oh,
yeah, very fantastical fantasy stuff. So, but definitely a lot of inspiration from the natural world as well.
hmm
Yeah.
yeah. Fantasy often does have that.
Is there anything that you would love to see in the nonfiction picture book market?
Not that I can think of. Uh, my books. No.
You mentioned that your curiosity for natural history is growing more. Um,
Yeah.
could you tell me a little bit more about that and what that looks like?
What do you mean? I'm not.
Just in terms of like, I don't really know what to think of when I think natural history. So, what goes through your mind when you think of that? Like, what about it is curious to you?
Oh, you should, and that's sort of a all-encompassing word for wild animals. Um,
Ah,
mostly for me, it's insects. I've loved bugs since I was a kid, and I'm a co-founder of the Connecticut Butterfly Association, and I'm just very interested in insects. So I tend to do a lot of that, and I forgot the question.
um, I'm trying to recall it now as well. Oh, what about natural history captures your imagination?
Oh yeah, and that's just it. The stories of their lives are just fascinating to me. The adaptations that they evolved to survive in our world, and these things live out and they survive the coldest winters, the hottest summers, droughts and flooding, and everything that lives in our yard has survived all these things
Hmm.
for thousands, millions of years, and it's each and every one has that story, has that fascinating story to tell how they managed to survive. And to me, that it's those survival, um, not instincts or survival adaptations that make them unique. Each one of them unique to where they live, and finding and discovering these things is just it just blows my mind. Some of these things are just absolutely amazing. When you come across them, and both in their form and in their life history, how they actually survive.
Hmm. Oh, that's really cool. It's very cool that you're bringing those amazing stories into like these great accessible picture books for kids. I think that's really amazing.
Thank you.
Um, well, thank you so much for chatting with me. I think those are all of our questions. But if listeners or readers wanted to connect with you online, where can they find you?
What's that?
Uh,
I,
if,
I
if readers or listeners want to connect with you online, where can they find you? Twitter,
oh, I
social
have a
media?
website, johnhimmelman.com. I'm on Facebook. And I'm just starting, by the time this comes out, it'll probably be out there. WordPress, I have something called, I have a blog. It's All Things Reconsidered Again at WordPress.com. And I'm about to put up every book, the story behind every book that I've done. I think I'm up to about 85.
Wow.
Uh, Because what happens is you do a new one, and then the other one sort of gets pushed back, and I'm kind of rediscovering and talking about how they were made and mistakes I see in them, and things I learned from doing them. So that's all going to be up there. There'll be a new book every week, and starting sometime in February. So I would look for that.
Oh, awesome. Okay, wait. One more question that I have to ask. If you could be any insect, which one would you be?
I'd be a katydid singing up in a tree. A warm summer night with all my katydid friends.
Oh, amazing, amazing. Well, thank you so much, John, for the interview.
It was
All
great
right.
talking to you.
Yeah, and thank you, listeners, for listening. Yeah, goodbye.
Bye.